This is Sarah Leslie with Go All In, helping entrepreneurs live the life they want to live right now, making the money they want to make, the way they want to make it, while also living a rich and full life outside of their business. True personal freedom. Let's go. Hey, hey, hey. Welcome to Go All In. Man, I love the title of my podcast more and more every conversation I have with people, because I realize, wow, there are a lot of people who are really not all in. And there's no judgment, right? That's not coming from judgment within me. It's an awareness of, wow, I really am doing something that is unique, that is outside of the mainstream. I knew that and I know that. And when I get reminded of it, I'm like, wow, I am really going all in. I am taking my life to a whole next level on a regular basis. And I say that simply because if you're truly doing the inner work on a consistent basis, primarily with a practitioner of some sort who is able to help you actually see the things that you can't see about yourself, you are growing rapidly. Assuming that you're in the flow and you're actually like doing the work and you're going in that direction versus constantly in the resistance of it, which again, there's no shame if you're in that resistance because I have been there also. And that being said, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably one of those people who's going all in, who's like, yes, yes, and yes, even when it scares you. And, when I have people sign up to work with me, specifically one-on-one, that is usually the sentiment that they express, which is, I'm terrified and so excited at the same time. And it's like, yeah, because you're on the precipice of radically changing your life. Now, you don't necessarily know that when you're here, and you're not necessarily like able to even think about that or really envision it conceptually because you just can't know what you really can't know. So the future is unknown to all of us. And when you've been living in a certain way for so long, right? Like you've been people pleasing, or you've been accommodating, or you've been adjusting yourself, or seeking approval from others for years and years and years, you only see life in one way. You know that there's like another way, and there are other options, but it's very limited what your mind will allow you to imagine. And it's even more limited because you have so much fear and self-doubt. Otherwise, you'd already have made the changes. So that being said, it takes us so beautifully into the topic that I wanted to share with you on today's podcast, which is this notion around waiting. And my offering to you is like, stop living in the waiting. Because when you're waiting, and I'm just speaking to this as a general stance, right? When you're being in waiting. So it's a state of mind, like, oh, I have to wait for whatever it is that you're wanting to have happen in your life, whatever the changes are, whatever the things ahead. And you're in the position, you've postured yourself in a waiting stance, right? You're now being someone who believes they have to wait for the results that they desire. And basically, what I want to say to you is if you're waiting, then you're actually living in a misunderstanding. Again, there's no shame, no judgment here. And let this be liberating to your ears to recognize, like, whoa, if I'm waiting, then I'm actually misunderstanding what is available for me. And you're misunderstanding, I guess I'll say even more importantly, you're misunderstanding the way that life works, the natural laws of how life works. So when I think of waiting, right, it reminds me of standing in line, which I don't know about you, but I don't love standing in line. Now, I like this example because the notion of waiting and you see yourself, like you can just quickly imagine yourself standing in line, it gives you the visual to help you understand what's actually going on inside of you. And so when we start to think, oh, I can't have this right now, this isn't available for me right now, I have to wait, air quotes. That is a stopping strategy. You could say a slowing strategy. And for more emphasis, I'm going to say a stopping strategy inside of your mind, inside of who you are. There's a place inside of you that's like, whoa, those big dreams, that big vision, that sounds really amazing and also really scary. So, like, let's just slow it the fuck down. And this is one of those things that we do as humans, because while we say that we want the things, oftentimes we slow ourselves down from having the things. Like, I would say the majority of the time, there's a stopping inside of you that's like, well, I know I would just, reroute the money, or I would just open a new bank account and decide I'm going to, instead of share money with your significant other, I'm going to split up the money, and I'm going to manage my own money and then have a joint account, as for example, which is something very common that I've worked with couples on over the years, and people that I'm working with one-on-one have helped them to have those conversations with their significant other. Because again, money is like one of those things that we find ourselves feeling very fearful around. And then when you come into partnership with someone else, they're bringing their fears around money into the partnership, right? So again, when we're living under the notion that we have to wait, then we don't just split up the bank account. We don't just assert ourselves and say, I'm not waiting for this. This is what I want. And here's what I'm doing next to move towards that happening. And that's just one example of like a bazillion, right? So I could give you endless amounts of examples. There are so many people who have talked about so many different things that they really want. They want to buy a new house. They want to live someplace differently. They want to travel more. They want to homeschool their kids. They want to spend more time outdoors. All of these different things, right, that people will talk about and say that they really want. But then when it comes down to the action, they're like paralyzed. They're almost like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, now none of these actions, none of these circumstances are complicated. None of that is complicated. You follow a protocol, right, to know how to move from sending your kids to school to homeschooling them. It's not actually hard. It's the feeling that is hard. And we have like anxiety and fear and uncertainty, right? Like making an investment, you're like, oh, I really want to invest my money. Making an investment and putting that money into wherever it is you want to invest it in, that's not hard. It's like very easy. You go to your bank account, you move the money, right? I mean, yes, there's going to be some steps, but also it's not hard. And so same thing with opening a new bank account. Not hard. Same thing with traveling. Not hard. So we have all of these things that people desire, none of which are actually hard, but there are other reasons that pop up in our minds and the way that we are viewing what's possible for us. And we create a story, we have a narrative that is what makes it hard to do the things we desire to do. Does that make sense for you? So you can just think about like, what is it in your life right now that you've been talking about wanting to do or wanting to have or wanting to be, and you haven't yet arrived there. You haven't yet done the thing. Sometimes it's like making more money, right? You want to make X amount of money and you haven't like quote unquote figured out how to make that money yet. Again, it's not that it's not available to you. It's that you have a narrative that won't allow you to make that money. So when you're waiting to make the money, to start the homeschooling, to start traveling, to change your significant other relationship in whatever way, or have more control of your money, again, you're actually living inside of a misunderstanding. You're living inside of a misguided sentiment of how you should
be living your life. And some of the other words that I use to describe that are like, you're used to accommodating to someone else. You're used to following other people's rules. You're used to people pleasing. You're used to not making changes when you know it will upset someone else, which is people pleasing and needing other people's approval and following other people's rules. If you're not clear, because honestly, when I got to the age of about 38, my late 30s, and I was so miserable with my life, and I was like, man, something has to change. The changes that I wanted to make were not anything other than I've already stated here today, and nothing unusual that you would be like, whoa, that's so radical. Like, no, none of them were like that. In fact, they were all very simple things that regular folks are doing all the time. And yet I literally felt like I was waiting to be able to make them. Why? Because I didn't see, in other words, I didn't believe I could just make those changes. I had so much deeply ingrained narrative about, what women can do, what single women can do, what, a woman who's making X amount of money can do. All of these different narratives, in other words, beliefs and sets of beliefs, right? Systems of belief that dictated everything I did. And so I found myself in my late 30s, very successful on paper, making really great money as the director of clinical services at a treatment center, having, gotten a social work degree, making fabulous money, and being the director, having several direct reports and many indirect reports, owning my own house, all of the things. And I genuinely did not know how to make the changes that I wanted to make. I genuinely felt like I couldn't make them. Like there was this invisible barrier keeping me from simply doing the thing, which again, when I think back on it, it's like, whoa, that is so crazy. And again, I have no judgment for you and no shame. There's no problem here. It's an opportunity to have your eyes awoken, to have your eyes unveiled, to have your eyes pop wide open like you've never seen what's in front of you before. Because this is the truth. If you're not living the way that you desire to be living, then it is only because of you that you're not living differently. And so again, there's no shame in that. I'm not communicating any shame or any judgment. It's not your quote unquote fault, but it is only you that stops you from making those changes. Even when we're in really harsh conditions, whatever that looks like or means to you in your mind, we're still responsible for changing ourselves first to alleviate those conditions. So, let's see here. It's the mechanism, right? It's the slowing you down on purpose because we don't ultimately want to change as humans. We actually would really prefer not to change. We'd actually really prefer to keep things as they are and to try to get the current thing to really be working. And this happens in relationships. This happens in jobs. This happens in, when you're living in a place and you start to like feel uncomfortable in whichever one of those you're in. And you start to like feel this really like heavy underlying current of, I feel really uncomfortable. I feel like this isn't where I'm meant to be. But also, I don't actually want to make the changes to be somewhere else. And I see this especially when I'm working with clients and they've been, for instance, in a community for a really long time and they're generating business and they're creating friendships and they're feeling, there's like a mutual reciprocity that's happening, but they start to feel uncomfortable. Or they're in a long-term relationship and the same thing happens. Or they're in a job and the same thing happens. Or they're living in a house and the same thing happens. I've been in all of these situations and you get this like really just very subtle, low-lying anxiety and restlessness that starts to happen. And you start to do things to distance yourself from the thing that you're currently in without actually acknowledging, hey, I've outgrown this thing. Why? Because we've been trained and conditioned to believe the way that we should be going through life is by holding on to the things that we're currently in, versus what I believe is simply just more true, which is that we've been created to evolve. We've been created to grow. I mean, when you just literally think about the human body, we are constantly growing. We don't like hit a certain age and stop growing. No, we're constantly growing every day until we're no longer physically on the planet. And even then, I would make the case we're continuing to grow even past our human bodies passing on. So, all of that to bring me back around to, if you feel like you're waiting, there's a misunderstanding. And the best thing, the most freeing thing, the most liberating thing you could do for your entire existence and your entire legacy for your future and that which you will leave behind you is to find out what is the misunderstanding and set of misunderstandings that you are currently living under, and then free yourself from it. So the way that I believe that life is always working is that we're always in motion, which means we're always desiring something more. We're not being greedy. We're not being selfish. We're not overindulging. We're just literally operating in the flow of life. We're growing. We're constantly growing, and we're constantly desiring more than what we have right now. Now, when I'm talking about that, that's in a really pure, honest way that's like really attuned to the still small voice within you. And when we ask, whether it's indirectly asking or it's very directly asking for more of something, then what we shift into is this space of delivering the thing that we are desiring. So we're putting ourselves into the stream of life, quote unquote, and we are allowing ourselves to want the more, to desire the more, to move towards it. Again, whether it's indirect or directly, you're allowing yourself to move towards it when you're wanting for it. And oftentimes we slow ourselves down by some narrative that says we can't really have it. And so there's this internal conflict that starts to happen. That doesn't mean the mechanism isn't working. It is working. It's just that your narrative, your interference is getting in the way. So as soon as you ask for something, it's on its way to you in some form or another. Oftentimes, we just don't really understand how it's coming to us. And we get so stuck in the like, I need to know how, that we can't let that go. We can't shake that loose. We want to have control. We want to have certainty. We want to know for sure how life works out. And let me tell you, friends, that just isn't the design. And so you can fight against the design the rest of your life. You can fight against the design, or you can surrender to the design and let go of the control and let go of the need to know and let go of the having to have it all planned out, of needing to have the certainty of life. That just isn't a real thing. So I'll end with this. When you're in the flow of life, it feels easeful. It feels delicious. It feels light. It feels like you could step out of the boat. I use this analogy sometimes because I grew up in the church and the parables of the Bible are very strong within me. It can feel like you're stepping out of the boat, right? And you're reaching up to someone else's hand who's just out ahead of you, and you're learning to walk on the water. And it's like, whoa, this really works. I really can walk on the water. Yes, you really can. And so much more. So I'm going to close with this story of my own, this parable, if you will, of my own. If I won the lottery and you and I happen to be really good friends, and I called you up and I said, hey, friend, I am so excited. I just won the lottery and I can't wait to give you $1 million. And I said to you, I can't come now, but I'm going to come and visit you in about 6 months. And when, I come and I visit, I'll be bringing it in cash. It'll be up to you to decide where you want to put it, how you want to diversify it, what you want to spend, all of the things. And I'm so excited. I can't wait to see you. How much of that 6 months would you spend being in the posture of I'm waiting? Probably very little. I don't know about you, but I would spend no time in the waiting, because here I have this friend who I trust and have close relationship with, and I fully believe they're going to be bringing me $1 million. I'm not like wondering if it's going to happen. I know that it is going to happen. And then it's a posture, right? So instead of the posture being I'm waiting, like I'm in line, like I've got to be patient, like I've got to work at letting go of control. No, it's the posture of excitement, of energy, of enthusiasm, of whoa, my whole life is about ready to be so different in the very best of ways. I am beyond excited. Let's go. Oh, excuse me. I would be spending so much time in the planning of what am I going to do when you get there? How am I going to spend this $1 million? What am I going to invest it in? I'd have a financial advisor. I'd be talking with a personal trainer. I would be talking to my coach about the next immersion I'm going to do with him. I would be planning for the next trip I want to take. I can't wait to go to Ireland again. And so on. Are you with me? Yes. That's what faith looks like when we're in the flow, when we're actually actively in the action of faith. That's what it looks like. We're not waiting. We're not standing in line at Disney World. That's not what's happening. When we know for sure that God or life are going to bring us the desires of our heart, we are in the knowing that it is going to happen. Therefore, we let go of how it's going to happen, and we trust that whatever path needs to unfold for us so that we can actually get to the place we desire to be, it is and will happen. It's just already happening right now as we speak. All right, my loves. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I love spending time with you. So, to review, look at your life and ask yourself, where am I waiting right now? And what is it I think I'm waiting on, so that you can get more clear, right? We need that awareness so that we can make the change. And when you're able to see, oh, I'm waiting on this. Okay, cool. What story are you currently telling yourself? What's the narrative you're currently living out of, operating from, that's got you in the waiting? And then what's the narrative? What's the shift that you need to make internally within your narrative that you then need to nurture so that you actually believe it? What's the shift that needs to happen so that you can actually be in faith of the desires of your heart coming manifest, coming true, coming realized? All right, my friends, between now and when I see you next, go do that next thing your heart is showing you to go and do. Cheers.
Ready to hire your own personal one-to-one mentor to help you take your life and your business to the next level? Go to my website where you can sign up for a no charge, no pressure consultation where we can get to know each other better. I get to hear your vision. I'll help you understand exactly what's getting in your way. And if it feels like a good fit and I believe I can help you, we'll talk about what it looks like to work together.